I want to take this on to the journey of grief, and I want to talk about the right way to grieve. But I want to ask you, is there a right way to grieve? No, it's not, right? It's no right way to grieve. We all have our own experiences with grief. But there are similarities among us, right? There are things that we all have in common. So I want to share with you a story. A story that I know my husband feels 100 times more than I do. But when I was asked to do this, I told him right away, I have to talk about your story. So my husband's favorite person was his grandma. And one day in 2011, she got sick and she got taken into the hospital. The night before it happened, him and other relatives stayed with her. And she was asked if she was willing to go through with the procedure. And she said, no, I don't want to do it. It's too risky. So, okay. So she said no. And then my husband and the other relatives, they left. But in the morning, the medical student staff somehow convinced her to go through with the procedure. She signed and she went through with the procedure. But it didn't work. She bled out. And they didn't have the proper personnel there to help her, to save her. I mean, talking about grief, you knew that she was sick, but it was so unexpected. So it was hard. It was really hard for all of them. But I want to mention something really important. That it killed my husband's relatives, his mother, his uncles, and there was so much more than it did him, even though he had a great relationship with him. But I want to talk about that because relationships are everything. He built that relationship. We cannot escape death. We can't escape death. But what made it different for him, that he knew she was going to die one day, and it just happened to be a day that he wasn't prepared for. They had no regrets. They had regrets. They hadn't spoken to her in years. And now all this, I wish I had more time with her. I wish I wouldn't have said this. I wish I would have done this more. They all have to live with that, but he doesn't have to. So let's talk about what happens in our brain when death occurs, when a loss occurs. Grief can happen in so many different ways. You may lose your dream job. You may lose your spouse. You may lose your boyfriend, girlfriend. But what happens is we all have a story that we're telling ourselves. A story about our life, right? So if I have a story in my head telling myself, I'm going to be this career woman, I'm going to, I'll play basketball, I'm going to play in the WNBA. And that story gets destroyed, what happens? Well, we start developing a lot of negative emotions because we tell ourselves, oh my gosh, I was supposed to do this, I'm a failure now, this was my only way out, or my mom is gone now, what am I supposed to do? She was my everything. So when the story gets destroyed, we start having negative feelings and thoughts. When we have negative feelings and thoughts, we start having triggers in our lives. We get triggered. When somebody says something or when somebody does something, it triggers us. And when we get triggered, it leads to a lot of different things. We have psychological triggers, and we have physical triggers, and we have behavioral triggers. Triggers are no fun, but what they do is they can change everything in your life. You start reacting in a different way, you start behaving in a different way, and you start feeling in a different way, right? So this all can be caused by grief. So I was curious when I was asked to speak. I wanted to ask my audience, what is the most difficult part for you about the grieving process? And so as you can see up there, a lot of them said depression, anxiety, the what ifs, that I wish I would have had some more time. Okay, what do I do now? How do I move on? A lot of people mention the void, like the void because you feel like you have a hole in yourself. And the void comes from that we put a lot of our identity in the things that we do and the people around us. So if we can understand that we need to love ourselves first, not put everything that we have into other people and into the things that we do, then that's not going to be as strong anymore. How about facing denial? And if you're a mother or a father, it's not about just you grieving, but how about everybody else grieving? So knowing all this, knowing that our story gets destroyed, knowing that we have a lot of negative thoughts and emotions, knowing that we get triggered, how do we heal? But I'm going to go a different route. Instead of telling you how you can heal, I want to share with you a video I thought was really helpful for how you can help someone who's grieving.
So what do we do about all the pain we see in the world? All the pain we feel in our own lives? And why does it seem like our best efforts to help somebody feel better always backfire? I've been studying intense grief and loss, baby death, violent crimes, accidents, suicides, and natural disasters. And I've learned something really interesting. Cheering people up, telling them to be strong and persevere, helping them move on, it doesn't actually work. It's kind of a puzzle. It seems counterintuitive, but the way to help someone feel better is to let them be in pain. This is true for those giant losses and the ordinary, everyday ones. Educator Parker Palmer writes, "The human soul doesn't want to be advised or fixed or saved. It simply wants to be witnessed, exactly as it is." He's talking about acknowledgement here. Acknowledgement is this really amazing multi-tool. It makes things better even when they can't be made right. For example, somebody's struggling. Their baby died, or there's been a bad accident, or their mom got sick, and they're just sad. It's way more helpful to join them in their pain than it is to cheer them up. But here's what we tend to do instead. You have 2 other children, you need to find joy in them. Or, you know what you need? You just need to go out dancing and shake it off. Or, I felt really sad once. Did you try acupuncture? We're not really sure what to do with someone's pain, so we do what we've been taught. We look on the bright side. We try to make people feel better. We give them advice. It's not like this is nefarious. I mean, we try to cheer people up because we think that's our job. We're not supposed to let people stay sad. The problem is, you can't heal somebody's pain by trying to take it away from them. Now, acknowledgement does something different. When a giant hole opens up in someone's life, it's actually much more supportive to acknowledge that hole and let pain exist. It's actually a radical act to let things hurt. It goes against what we've been taught. In order to really support you, I have to acknowledge that things really are as bad as they feel to you. If I try to cheer you up, you end up defending yourself and your feelings. If I give you advice, you feel misunderstood instead of supported. And I don't get what I want either, because I wanted you to feel better. It's pretty rare that you could actually talk somebody out of their pain. Rarely does the admonishment to look on the bright side actually heal things for someone. It just makes them stop telling you about their pain. It's so tempting to try to make things better. When somebody shares something painful, it's much more helpful to say, "I'm sorry that's happening. Do you want to tell me about it?" To be able to say, "This hurts," without being talked out of it, that's what helps. Being heard helps. It seems too simple to be of use, but acknowledgement can be the best medicine we have. It makes things better, even when they can't be made right.
Just needed someone there when they were grieving instead of having someone tell them what to do. Instead of telling someone, they'll get better, or look at it from the bright side, we can tell them, or we can ask them, what was she like? What was he like? Tell me a little more. You'll find that these people who are grieving will kind of snap out of that state because they'll be excited to talk about the good times. Instead of making it all about you, which we do a lot, right? When somebody says they're going through something, we want to bring in what we've been going through. Instead of saying I was lost, how about you say, I'm here for you, whatever you need, I'm here. And instead of saying, just call me if you need me, we're so good to do this on Facebook, right? Oh girl, I'm here. Just show up, just be there, just show up. So like I talked a little bit about triggers before, so when we're grieving, we get triggered more easily. I want you to figure out what is it in your life, grief especially, also has to do with trauma. What is it that triggers you? Is it certain people? Is it certain places? Is it certain sounds? Is it certain smells? Is it when somebody says something? Once you identify the triggers, it'll be a little easier to go through whatever you're going through. Another thing, forgiveness is everything, right? So we want to be able to forgive ourselves. And what I mean by that is, as it relates to grief, most of the pain doesn't come from a loss. Most of the pain comes from shame. For us blaming ourselves that we should have been someone else. Or guilt, we should have done something else. And as long as we keep doing that, that's going to determine how long it's going to take for us to heal. So I put this together. I thought this should help you in general, not just when you're grieving, but it's critical to get to know yourself. You need to know who you are. You need to know what sets you off, what you're passionate about, what you love. Okay, so get to know yourself. And then, the most important part of all, learn to love yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, you're going to put everything into other people and into things, and you're never going to be able to be happy. And especially, you're not going to be able to be joyful, because that's the goal. And then, I used my husband's story as an example of having a relationship. I know sometimes you can't control the relationship, right? If you want to have a relationship and that person doesn't want to have it with you, you can't control it. You can still control the story that you're telling yourself. But nurture your relationships, because the better you take care of your relationships, the easier the grieving process is going to be for you, because you will have less regrets. And then finally, use your pain as a source of strength. Use it to help someone else. Use it to tell your story. Use to help a friend. Use it to do something productive with it. Because you're going to see, and a lot of people don't realize, they think that they're too depressed or too sad to help someone else. But when you're helping someone else, there's no way to be sad and depressed at the same time, because you can't do both at the same time. And a lot of people are so into their emotions and so into their feelings that they're not willing to take that leap, to take that step, to go out of the way to help someone, because it's all about me. So once you take that step, you're going to feel so empowered to help someone else. Maybe open up a nonprofit, maybe open up a coaching business, maybe opening up a speaking business. I don't know what it is, but use it as a source of strength. What's been the main theme? It's been about the story that you're telling yourself. So in order for you to be able to get through anything, especially grieving, is to change the story that you're telling yourself about the loss. Maybe you lost that job. Okay, it wasn't meant to be. Can I do something else? Maybe you lost a loved one. Okay, that happened, but how about the good times we had? And how about me talking about that person? And really honoring that person and sharing to other people how amazing that person was. And again, always using the pain as a source of strength. That's how, slowly but surely, you'll start rewiring your brain. That's what I have to do. And sometimes you have to get to a point where you're just like sick and tired of being sick and tired. You're like, I don't want to deal with this pain anymore. And people have been telling you for years, like, okay, get your life together, it's time. You're like, yeah, I know. That's why advice doesn't work. That's why advice doesn't work. You gotta be willing to want it yourself. So to rewire your brain, you have to understand that the pattern and the wiring of your brain is not beneficial to your life, regardless of what life you want to lead. And that's the point that I got to, and how I changed my life, and I had to overcome my own negative self-talk. But it doesn't matter if we know that we're loved by a God. It doesn't matter if other people loves us if we're not willing to receive it. We can know things, but if we're not willing to receive it and implement it into our lives, it will never change. So many people I meet that are believers, but they don't like themselves. They hate themselves. They're depressed. They contemplate suicide, but they know who He is. You're telling yourself something else in your head. If you know how much He loves you, you need to know that you have to love yourself too. When you start changing the story, when you overcome your negative self-talk, your life can completely transform. I know it firsthand, it did it for me. So that's how that workbook came about. My husband and I got together and I said, I have to help other people with it. So if you want it, it's available for later.